Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee and today I'm going to teach you a really cool recipe. We're going to make freshly milled bread bowls, and I am really excited to be teaching you guys this recipe because bread bowls are so impressive. I remember I made them when my parents were staying with us, and I think it was broccoli cheddar soup that I put in there because I was trying to do like a Panera thing, and they were just so like impressive. Everybody got their own bread bowl, and I love to serve people, so I had them sit in the living room and I brought them out to everybody, and my parents and my husband were all just like, oh my gosh, Jaylee Marie, like what is this? And so it was really fun and made me feel so good to serve them. And I think that it's so confidence building when you have those recipes under your belt that are kind of different and unique and like just really impressive. So I'm really excited. This is video 2 in my 3-part Valentine's dinner video. We are making French onion soup, and we are going to be putting the soup in these bread bowls. So I've adapted this recipe to create 2 to 3 bread bowls, and when I put this recipe on the website, I will include a second one with a bigger quantity. So if you're making these for like, I think I'm going to do the recipe to be like 4 or 5 bread bowls, or maybe 5 or 6, but this recipe that I'm going to give you in this video makes 2 or 3. And the reason I say 2 or 3 is because you can make 2 decent sized bread bowls. I use this recipe when I make them for my husband and I, or you could make 3 smaller bread bowls. So just keep that in mind with the measurements I'm going to give you, and then check out the blog on my website for different measurements and different serving sizes. So the very first thing that we're going to do here is deal with our water and our yeast. So I have my KitchenAid mixer. You don't have to use it, but I'm going to for this recipe. And this recipe is going to be, the water and the flour will be in grams, because that's how I like to do things when I'm dealing with freshly milled flour. So we need 360 grams of warm water. Perfect. We can go ahead and get that in our bowl. You want water. I always do the pinky test when I'm working with yeast. This is a yeasted recipe, not a sourdough recipe. If you stick your pinky in the water and it's too hot for your pinky, it's too hot for the yeast. But the yeast does like to have the water a little bit warm. It helps it to wake up. And then to that warm water, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar. You could absolutely use honey or whatever sweetener you like to have in your kitchen. I'm going to just mix that sugar in with the warm water because you want to kind of try and dissolve that sugar the best you can before you add your active dry yeast to it. The sugar helps activate the yeast, but the actual sugar granules, if they're not dissolved, can be harmful to the yeast. So you want the sugar, but you want the sugar to be dissolved in the warm water. All right, and now we are going to add 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast. And now we wait for that to become activated. Usually it takes about 5 minutes. While we're waiting for the yeast to activate, I also need 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the microwave really quick while we're waiting on the yeast. All right, our yeast is nice and active, so now at this point we are going to add in our 2 tablespoons of melted butter. We are going to add in 2 tablespoons of salt. And now at this point we are going to add our flour. Now, I have 480 grams of a freshly milled hard red wheat. I probably would have done a hard red, hard white 50-50 split. I don't have any hard white wheat right now, so hard red is all I'm working with. You do want a wheat that has a little bit higher of a gluten content because you are looking for a bit of a rise here. We are making bread. With most bread recipes, if you were not doing a freshly milled recipe, it would say something along the lines of 4 to 5 cups or 3 to 6 cups or something like that. It's giving you a bit of a range because based on various factors of your kitchen, you may need more or less flour. And that can be true with freshly milled flour. However, freshly milled flour does not behave the same as white flour. It takes time to absorb the moisture. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and add in all of the 480 grams of flour. And then we are going to let it mix just to come together. I'm going to stop it and scrape down the sides here. And I let it mix until I don't see any more spots of dry flour. Once it all looks pretty wet, that's when I stop it. Now, when you're making bread using white flour, usually you'll do the finger test. Well, you'll put your finger on it, and if it comes back like really super sticky, then it needs more flour. I don't do that with freshly milled flour. This is wet. It looks wet, it'll feel wet, but that's because the freshly milled flour needs time to absorb the liquid. Right now it's kind of like almost like water repellent, like it's not truly like in the flour yet the same way that white flour is. And so you need to let this sit for a minimum of 15 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, somewhere in that range. I usually take a piece of plastic wrap. I've got one right here. And I just kind of loosely, you don't have to be crazy about it, but I just kind of loosely try to cover it. I just put this down, and then I just kind of like go around the attachment and just kind of loosely cover it just to try to keep it from getting a skin. It's not a huge deal. There we go. Covers up pretty well. And I'm just going to let this sit for like 15 minutes and then we'll come back. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. I think it's probably been about 20 minutes. I was doing some other tasks, letting this sit. All right, so now I can tell that it definitely has been absorbing. It doesn't look quite as sticky as before. So now we're just going to let this knead for like 3 to 5 minutes. Now, when you are doing that last kneading, if the ball of dough is sticking to the hook and it's not sticking to the sides of the bowl, you're good. You don't need to add any more significant flour. Now, it may still be a little sticky, and it needs to be workable because after it does this first rise, we're going to cut it and shape it into our bread bowls. So it needs to be workable. So here is how I manage that if it's still too sticky. So I'm going to go ahead and start fooling with it, and it is sticking to me a little bit. I'm going to get it out. Actually, first, before I do that, I keep a little all-purpose flour on hand for exactly this purpose. You could absolutely still use freshly milled for this. I never do because I don't like to waste it. I'm on a very, very tight budget, and I may not use it all for this, and so I don't know how much to mill, so I just don't ever do that. I always use all-purpose for this. So we're going to get our dough ball out. And see how it is still sticking to me? That's not quite as workable as we need it to be for what we're doing. It's not terribly sticky, but it's a little bit. And so how I do that, I add a little bit of all-purpose, and I just kind of work it in and do a little self-kneading until I really like the consistency and the texture of my dough. And to me, that's the best way to gauge the flour amount without accidentally adding too much or going overboard with it. And it also makes the bread making process a lot more personal. I put my hands to it. I was the decision maker in deciding about the flour, and it's just very like, it's just helping to enhance and develop that homesteader mindset of not only am I going to do this because, you know, whatever your reasoning, I want to feed my family quality meals, I really enjoy the taste of homemade food, whatever the case may be, it makes that much more personal and helps develop that mindset. Does that make sense? So look at this. Look how absolutely beautiful this is. I only had to add a little bit of flour, and my dough feels amazing. Perfect. Absolutely. So maybe it could use one more little sprinkle. Make sure you are careful, though, not to add too much, right? You don't want to add a crazy amount of flour. Beautiful. All right, now shape it into a nice little ball. And then here I've got a bowl with lined with oil. I'm out of olive oil, so I used coconut oil. Use whatever, or if you've got one of those like olive oil sprays or whatever, anything will work. You just don't want to, you want to oil it somehow to keep the dough from sticking to it. And then we're going to cover it up with that same plastic wrap, or you could do a tea towel, just something to keep it from getting that hard skin on the outside. And we are going to put this somewhere warm to rise, depending on the temperature of wherever you keep it, somewhere from 30 minutes to an hour. You just want it to almost double in size. All right, you guys, let's finish up these bread bowls. We are almost done. So as you can see, this is beautiful. It has doubled in size. It looks great. I'm gonna get just a little bit of flour out. Doesn't have to be a lot because we're already happy with our dough texture and consistency, right? So we just want a little. Oh, wow, that is beautiful. Pop any big bubbles that you see. Oh my gosh, that is so nice to the touch. I love, 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 love making bread. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I'm not sticking to it at all. I'm just gonna incorporate a little bit of flour in here. All right, and then one of my absolute favorite kitchen tools, I will have an affiliate link down in the description if you don't have one. I recommend it. It is a bench scraper. I absolutely love this thing. And we're just going to roughly cut this in half. I do want to give you a tip. Where did I put my kitchen scale? I have actually started doing this. If you want them to be exactly the same size, then weigh your dough, 890, half of which is 445. You're going to go ahead and just roughly cut it in half. But I'm always really bad at eyeballing. That's 420. 447, good enough for me. And that way you will have perfectly even bread bowls, perfectly matching bread bowls. And now we're just going to roll it up into a ball. Now, I've mentioned this before when making bread on the channel, but I'm going to show you again. When building tension and trying to get a nice round ball of dough, with one hand you push away and around, and then using both hands you pull towards you. So up and in, up and in. And when you're coming in, you're also kind of tucking under. So up and in, and that will give you a really tight, beautiful ball of dough. It helps build tension. I do this in all of my sourdough breads, but I've just made it a habit to do it in all of my breads. Even when I'm making dinner rolls, when I'm making individual little dinner rolls, this is how I do it, and it just makes it really nice and pretty. So now I'm going to take this and set it on my prepared cookie sheet. Here I've got my baking sheet with parchment paper, and I'm just going to put my 2 bread bowls on there. Now, using a very sharp knife or using, I'm blanking on what these are called. It's a scoring tool, and I'm literally so blanking on what this is called. Either way, you're going to want to put an X. And then just loosely cover these with your piece of plastic wrap. Now, here's the thing. I've made these bread bowls several times now. I've been developing this recipe. And one thing that I've noticed is that you do not, we're doing the second proof now, you do not want to let these rise too much, because I've had them rise a lot and then deflate. And when I baked it, it stayed deflated. And it was still fine. We still used it as a bread bowl, but it just wasn't as, you know, nice and bread bowl-ish. It was more of a bread saucer. And so what I recommend is that you just let these rise until they're puffy. Not until they've doubled in size, nothing crazy. You just want them to look a little puffy, because right now they're like really tight and compact. We just rolled them, we built tension. Now we just want them to puff out a little bit. So I'm just going to set them over here on my stove. I've got something else going on one of the burners, so it's warm-ish over here. And I suspect it'll only take 20 to 30 minutes for these to get puffy. All right, guys, I want to show you what I like to see with the bread bowls. We're going to very carefully take off our plastic wrap. Be careful when you do this, because I have had it snag before and pull. So these are nice and puffy. And you can see they've got the X in them still. This is perfect, because this will continue to rise when it goes in the oven, and it'll be perfect. If you let them rise too much, like I said, they can deflate. This is beautiful. So I've got my oven preheating to 400 degrees, and once it's preheated, we'll put these in and bake them for 18 to 23 minutes, kind of depending on your oven. We're also going to do an egg wash. I don't always do the egg wash, but since I'm filming it and making it a video, let's go all out. So basically, I just do 1 egg and I do a splash of milk. And this is how I do my egg wash. Whisk this together. I have one of these pastry brushes, but the wood handle came out, so now I just kept the top. And I just like use the top to still brush stuff on. Isn't that funny? So I'm just gonna paint this egg wash on here. And that's going to help give this that nice shiny brown finish. All right, look at how pretty. These are gonna be gorgeous. So as soon as our oven's preheated, we'll put these in, and I'm probably gonna check it at like 16, 17 minutes, just to make sure. You guys, look at these perfect bread bowls. Oh my gosh. They look so good. So yeah, these are the bread bowls that we are going to use for our French onion soup bread bowls. They are absolutely gorgeous. However, sorry, I ran over here. Benny's over at my neighbor's house playing, and I was out there sitting on their porch. It's January and it's 55 degrees today, so we've been outside. I recommend making these, even if you're not going to do the French onion soup. Learn how to make these. You saw how super easy they are, and I've made them. I have filled them with broccoli cheddar soup. I have filled them with chili. I have filled them with tomato soup, and they're a crowd pleaser. They're so impressive and fun to eat out of. And then usually we're so full, because these are very filling. Usually we're so full that we can't finish the rest of the bread. And so I'll use it the next morning to make breakfast. We eat every bit of this bread, and it is delicious. So thank you guys so much. I hope that you liked this. I hope that you'll give these a try. And stay tuned so we can finish up this series and make our French onion soup bread bowls. Can't wait to see you in my next one. Have faith and keep moving forward.